Well, hello there. My name is Blade, and today I'll be giving you 10 queer film recommendations. So, I thought for the month of June I would give some queer film recommendations. Now, I want to get out of the way in which I selected these films because anybody who is into queer cinema or anybody who's into cinema might feel as though some of these are like surface level, but as I was making the list, I had a lot of more niche movies, but some of them I don't personally like care too much for myself. So I wanted to make sure if I was going to recommend movies, they're at least movies that I like or like are I feel as though are at least worth other people's time. And I also kind of figured, some people might not be familiar with these movies still. Some people who don't seek out queer cinema might not be familiar with them, or people who aren't into like the world of film, past like blockbuster like hits might not know of them, so they're worth mentioning still. Now, that being said, there are three movies you will not find here because I feel like they do have a certain place in pop culture. So most people have probably heard of them, which is going to be Brokeback Mountain, Call Me by Your Name, and Love, Simon. Great films. I just don't. I mean, maybe in a different video, but today you will not be finding those here. Now, additionally, before I get into our first film, I do want to comment that not most of them, this is the case, but not every single one of these films is necessarily like about the queer experience. Some of them are more so just that the main characters are queer, and that's nice to see in a film. And some of them are more along the lines of like there's like a queer subtext, because I still feel like those types of movies are valuable in the world of queer cinema because we are here and we exist. So I like films where the protagonists or those main characters who are queer, and that's not like the point of the story, because it's just normal and that's like the reality of life. And similarly with queer subtext, I think queer subtext is important because it explores, like there's something. I'll get more into those when I get to it, but I still think there's value in that. All right, so first up we have another gay movie from 2006 with the following premise. Andy, Jared, Nico, and Griff are gay teens and recent high school graduates. The four friends are also virgins and make a pact to lose their innocence before they leave for college in the fall. Now, I'm going alphabetical, so starting off with this movie is kind of wild, but I'm going, like I said, alphabetically, because this film is definitely on the raunchier side, I suppose, and it's definitely like very like silly and dumb. But I wanted to include it in this video because I think films like that are still, there is an audience for those films, and I think, there are many upon many like just dumb, wild movies that, that put straight people at the focus of the story. So let's talk about one that does that with queer people. I feel like this is also kind of like a weird subgenre of like coming of age movies as well. Like I've actually never seen Not Another Teen Movie or like American Pie or anything like that, but I feel like this is almost the queer version of that. So that's why I decided to include it. So I think the most interesting aspect of this film is that the main character is Michael Carbonaro. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that person, he is, I don't know if he's actually a magician or not. I'm not saying that as like any shade, but he used to host a TV show where he was like a magician and would do, like tricks on, very like impractical jokers, like tricking the public. So I just find it so wild that his digital footprint is him being in this movie. Like, you know what, slay, like go off, king. It also has Jonathan Chase in it, who is just, I'm sorry, I hate to do this in like all my videos lately, but he's just a beautiful man. But yeah, this movie is very silly, it's very fun, and honestly there are some aspects of it that I genuinely kind of like weirdly as silly and like sexually charged as this movie might be. I think there is great lessons in it for younger queer people about, you know, diving into the world of those types of things and doing so safely and doing so where you feel safe and comfortable and also not tolerating certain behaviors. So there is some like redeeming qualities about it for sure, and there is and it's just a fun time. So if you enjoy like silly fun queer films like, you know, like Hurricane Bianca or something, and if you also love like those like dumb like parody movies, like I think the disaster movie might be like, this definitely has more esteem to it than that. But yeah, if you enjoy stuff like that, you will definitely enjoy this film, and it is currently available on Tubi. Next up, we have Bottoms from 2023 with the following premise. Unpopular best friends PJ and Josie start a high school fight club to meet girls and to lose their virginity. They soon find themselves in over their heads when the most popular students start beating each other up in the name of self-defense. So, another comedy, but what's different with this comedy, you know, it came out in 2023, so it is very much like Gen Z vibes, but not in like the cringe, you know, older people like trying to relate to the kids kind of Gen Z, because this was made by people who get the vibe. It was directed by directed by Emil Siegelman and co-written with Rachel Sennett, who also stars in it. So I think that's what makes this movie honestly like so funny. The comedy and the writing in it is so good, because I mean, like, Rachel Sennett is honestly like a comedy god, but she also is, you know, an it girl. You know, she's part of Brat Summer.
A little more
Sexier.
slutty baby,
Yes.
maybe?
Yes. Mysterious.
Chin down. That's good.
Yeah.
She's got something. That's really incredible. Yeah. Let's get fucked up.
She's one of the Gen Z it girls, and as she motherfucking should be. She makes me laugh so hard. That story she told on one of the late night shows about her getting caught up in TSA is so funny, but I am like getting off track now. This movie is like, this is gonna be a crazy statement, but this is definitely a Fight Club for the girls, gays, and theys. It doesn't have like the psychological craziness aspect of Fight Club, obviously, but it is like that type of vibe if it was pink and written by the girls, gays, and theys. It also stars some Gen Z divas, including Ruby Cruz, Kaya Gerber, Nicholas Galatzine. It also stars Ayo Debris. I just want to Google her last name really quick before I butchered it. But this is just a really fun movie. It's just gay people being gay and causing mayhem. It's super silly. It's super camp. It's just a fun time. Nicholas Galatzine's character in this movie is fucking wild. He is just stupid, and he knows it, and I love it, and it's just so silly. And honestly, that was great casting. The whole movie's great casting, but that casting choice like eats really hard. So if that sounds like a good time to you, not me not writing what platform it's on. If that sounds like a good time to you, it is on Amazon Prime Video. Why is this video going so messy so far? I guess it's just the queer vibe. Next up, we have a personal favorite, which is I Care a Lot from 2021 with the following premise. A shady legal guardian lands in hot water when she tries to trick a woman who has ties to a powerful gangster. Now, you'll notice in that description it doesn't mention any type of queer storyline, so this is our first film that's not necessarily about being queer, but the protagonist is a queer woman. I'm not sure if she's bisexual, she's a lesbian, but either way she is with it is a woman loving woman situation. So it features a girl on girl relationship, if you will. And this movie, let me tell you about this movie. First of all, the cast. we've got Rosamund Pike, we've got Peter Dinklage, we've got Chris Messina, we've got Isa Gonzalez, we've got Alicia Witt, and we've got Diane Weist. I mean, like, come on, talk about casting. But this movie is honestly a hidden gem. I never see this movie get discussed, and I guess I can see why it came out. It like premiered at Toronto Film Festival in 2020, so like COVID time. And then it came out in 2021, which is pandemic era, so you think it'd have more eyes on it. But I think it premiering at a festival kind of during COVID probably like slighted it a little bit. But this movie is a hidden gem. This movie is just so like unapologetically this movie, if that makes sense. First of all, I think the writing is really funny. I also think the story is super compelling. It follows Rosamund Pike's character, who basically she's not the thing. It's one of those situations. The protagonist is not a good person, and I love when movies do that. I'm not in the belief that protagonists need to be like perfect characters, even good characters, because she is running this operation where she basically like forces elderly people into being under her care so she can like rob them blind, and then she like fucks around, finds out, tricks the wrong bitch. And it's just so good. Like, it's a riveting, like, I don't want to call it crime drama per se, but it's a riveting drama. I think the characters are interesting, and where it ends, I love that they like committed to that ending. So if that sounds interesting to you, this film is available on Netflix. Alright, so next up we have an extremely recent release, which is I Saw the TV Glow from 2024, which has the following premise. A classmate introduces teenage Owen to a mysterious late-night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. So I feel like there was enough of a discussion around this movie to where you're probably familiar with it, but at the same time, it didn't break through, I think, to like the wider audience, and it didn't. Unfortunately, it wasn't like a big player in awards season, so you might not have heard of it. It is an A24 release, so the A24 girlies definitely know about it. But this is a beautiful piece of queer cinema. It is, this is the first time I get to say this besides The Substance, but this is a Blade's Best in Show winner. I gave it my pick for my favorite screenplay of 2024, and also, fun fact, at my little Blade's Best in Show award show that I did, this was the most nominated film in 2024. It was basically in like almost all the categories, and I feel like that's why I gave it screenplay, because that really spoke to like, it was just a really well written film to where it was appearing in all these categories. But this is a beautiful piece of queer cinema. I did also talk about it a little bit in a recent video essay about like what is and like what is not horror. And I mentioned that it is visually, I mean, it's beautiful to look at, but it's not a film that is style over substance. It is rich with, I don't even know if I can call it queer subtext, because it is like a queer story, but it's just not kind of upfront about it. You do have to understand what you're watching on a deeper level to pick up on the fact that it is a queer story. But essentially, I think it talks about the queer experience in general, but it definitely has a heavier focus on, I think, gender identity and the trans experience. And I love that, because we have in recent time been getting more stories, about like queer people when it comes to sexuality, but there's not a lot of movies that are so unapologetically talking about the trans experience. So yeah, this is one where I can't really say too much. I think you just need to experience it for yourself. I think the little description does give a good idea of what the film is about, but a really simple version is just that Owen meets this classmate named Maddie, and she introduces him to this show called The Pink Opaque, which is, I guess you could compare it to like Goosebumps when we were younger, but it's a little bit more like scary than that, and they just start to question whether or not this film is this TV show is real or not. Now, I'm not going to say in what way, because that would be like spoiler territory, but if you're into films that are just visually, I mean, like beautiful, like if you, it's very ethereal and dreamlike. I'll try to put on screen some other movies I think visually it reminds me of. It's very washed and like pinks and purples, and it's just a powerful, beautiful story. It stars Justice Smith and Jack Haven. It was also made by Jane Schoenbrunn. It's just a beautiful, beautiful film, and I really can't say more about it. So I really recommend you watch this one, and if you choose to do so, it is available on Max. Next up, we have another recent release, and funny enough, another A24 release, which is Love Lies Bleeding, with the following premise. Lou is a reclusive gym manager who falls hard for Jackie, an ambitious bodybuilder who's heading to Las Vegas to pursue her dream. Their love soon leads to violence as they get pulled deep into the web of Lou's criminal family. So, similar to I Care a Lot, this is a film that is not necessarily like about the queer experiences, but the two protagonists are in a WLW relationship, and I think this is just a fun movie to watch. It stars Kristen Stewart, also has Ed Harris and Dave Franco. I guess I could say this is kind of a crime drama in disguise, because when you start to watch it, it's definitely not it's not the vibe that you think it's gonna be, but it is a really entertaining film. It has some good cinematography. I also think Kristen Stewart's performance in it is really powerful. I don't want to say too much about it because it is a film that I think you don't want to like spoil too much of it, but this is gonna probably be a very crazy comment, but something about it does like slightly remind me of like Terminator, but I think it's because it has like 80s vibes, and not because it takes place in the past. What I mean is like structurally and visually, like the way it's shot and the way the story operates just reminds me of a film that would have come out in the 80s. So if that is a film that interests you, it is also available on Max. Next, we have a movie that you've probably heard of, who knows, but that is 2016's Moonlight, which is about a look at 3 defining chapters in the life of Chiron, a young black man growing up in Miami. His epic journey to manhood is guided by the kindness, support, and love of the community that helps raise him. So, I'm not going to harp too much on this aspect because I want to celebrate and praise this movie, but this film is a Best Picture winner, and if it rings any bells for you, it is because this is the Oscar Best Picture winner fiasco that took place, honestly, like kind of several years ago now, but this is from the same year that La La Land was an awards contender, and if you'll remember, they accidentally read off that La La Land won when actually it was Moonlight. So that's all I'm going to say on that, because I really want to champion this movie and not dampen it. I really wish it would have got its moment like it deserved, because this is a beautiful queer story, and I love that it is a Best Picture winner. You know, it isn't as like in your face queer, but a part of me does feel like this is almost like course correction for Brokeback Mountain not getting Best Picture, and that fuck ass movie that is Crash got the Best Picture award that year. Love you, Matt Dillon, but ooh, that movie. But going back to Moonlight, this is a beautiful queer story. Also love that it is about a black man specifically, because you know I'm not black, so I can't speak on it too much, obviously, but you know, just being educated, I'll say, and being around the Black community since I was little, I am familiar, similar to how in Hispanic culture, like myself, that being queer and Black is not always accepted. So I love that this movie is not only about, it's a coming of age story about a queer man, but it is also a man of color in a community that isn't always the most accepting, sometimes just because of like tradition. This film has a stellar cast featuring Trayvon Rhodes, Andre Holland, Janelle Monáe, Naomi Harris, Marshala Ali. Like, this is a stacked cast. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to describe this movie because it really is just like the description says. It's 3 chapters from this guy's life, but because I feel like that can sound quite boring, but I promise it's very riveting. When he's younger, he goes through some trials and tribulations, and that definitely affects who he becomes in the last chapter of the film that we see. I don't want to call it like tragic by any means, but I think it really is relatable to a lot of queer people, especially queer people who've kind of had to hide versions of themselves or feel othered because they're not queer in like the traditional sense, if that makes sense. I'm definitely somebody who experiences that. I am queer myself, and I think sometimes when I have certain interests or certain ways that I present myself, sometimes queer people can be, I don't want to say judgmental, but they think there's like certain ways to be clear and that my behavior is like too like straight, when really there is no way like to be queer. So if this film seems interesting to you at all, I definitely recommend you watch it. There's definitely a reason why it's a Best Picture winner. It's compelling, it's heartwarming, it looks beautiful, it has some really amazing acting performances in it. So if you would like to watch this film, it is available on Hulu. Next up, we have a film that I actually watched for the first time this year, but I'm very excited to talk about it. It is Portrait of a Lady on Fire from 2019 with the following premise. France, 1770, Marianne, a painter, is commissioned to do the wedding portrait of Eloise, a young woman who just joined the convent. Heloise is a reluctant bride-to-be, and Marianne must paint her without her knowing. She observes her by day to paint her secretly. This is a beautiful film. It is French. So, if you're not a subtitle girly, I'm going to tell you to get the fuck over it and just read the subtitles. I'm actually also learning French, and this movie was very fun to watch, besides it being a good movie, because I realized as I was watching, I was like, girl, my French classes are kind of pulling off, because there was some lines I did not need the subtitles for. But anyways, this is a beautiful film. I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like from the description alone, you can probably gauge what the queer aspect of it is. But I'm gonna leave it ambiguous anyways. But this movie looks great. The cinematography is great. The writing is great. The ending, it is a little bit sad, but it's beautiful. This is a movie that stayed with me. Like, after I watched it, I literally wrote a poem inspired by the film, because I just thought it was such a beautiful love story. And there is a slight tinge of Brokeback Mountain, and I don't like to compare, but I only say that because it has, without giving anything away, like spoiling it, it has a similar quality to it, in which it is a little bit like, I don't want to say sad, but like, sad, but it's just true to the time period that it takes place. But also, don't talk about this a lot of movies, but with films, but great costuming. This film also is a film that has been added to the Criterion collection, so that's fun. I definitely hope to own that at some point. It is also a Cannes 2019 film select. So if all of that sounds like your jam, it is available through Hulu and Max. Next up, we are dipping back into the comedy realm with Red, White, and Royal Blue from 2023 with the following premise. Alex Claremont Diaz, the first son of the United States, and young Prince Harry fall in love. However, considering their high profile public lives, they must keep the relationship secret at all costs. Now, I don't have to describe the queer aspect for you because the description does it already. Now, I can imagine some eye rolls at me even like daring to mention this film in this video, but my thing is this film is definitely, it is cheesy, it is like kind of like like Netflix romance, if you will. Like it has the vibes of like To All the Boys I Loved Before or like the After movies. I definitely think the writing is it is like not as like that as like it's not as like on the level of an After movie, but that is the vibes. It is a child of Wattpad, if you will. But the reason I mention it is because A, it's just fun. Like just have fun with it. But B, do we not as gay people also deserve to have these like dumb fun movies like that as well, so that's why I put it in here, because there is an audience for these types of movies, and I think there should be. And what I really like about this movie, that I don't know if I'm gonna sound like silly for saying, but I really like this movie for young queer people, and like specifically it is a male on male situation, and I really love it specifically for that reason, because I think a lot of gay kids, specifically gay male kids, grow up in a time where they're just taught so many toxic things about like how they should navigate their lives and relationships as gay people. In this movie reinforces a different idea, and what I mean by that is there are like in the beginning there are some like hookup-y like aspects of it, but it turns into something really soft and gentle and beautiful, which I think is really important, because a lot of the times in movies, queer sex scenes are very like raunchy, or they're painted out to be taboo, and this one has some really like soft, gentle, and like loving scenes like that. I think that's just really important for younger queer slash gay people. It does star Nicholas Galatzine and Taylor Zakar Perez. Also, randomly, Uma Thurman as the President of the United States. That's wild, but you know what? Whatever, I'll take it. Like, slay Uma Thurman. I do have very mixed opinions, I'm not gonna lie, on people who are not queer playing queer people, but I think that's a conversation for a different day. And I will just say my opinion, this movie, it doesn't really bother me in reference to Nicholas Galatzine. So if this movie sounds interesting to you, it is available on Amazon. Alright, so our second to last movie is 2023's Saltburn with the following premise. Troubled by his classmates' unfortunate living situation, wealthy Oxford student Felix invites Oliver to stay at his estate, but a series of horrifying events soon engulf his eccentric family. Now, I want to get the elephant in the room out of the way. Some people might say like this is not a queer movie, and I don't totally disagree with that, but I do feel as though, and this is also like objectively true, but there is kind of a queer subtext and like queer ambiguity. There is also like actually like queer things that happen in this movie, but like the overall like story. So I know some people might roll their eyes at me including it, but I personally really enjoyed this movie. It's another Blade's Best in Show winner for cinematography of that year. So allow me to break down why I'm putting it in this video. I think this film does a great job of exploring because it's very much a film about desire, and I can see a lot of, specifically, I think it could apply to all genders, but I think specifically, I think this is a good film in encompassing what it's like when you're a young gay boy or even a bi man, whatever, and you have a thing for another guy and you're like confronting that feeling for the first time. Because in the movie, it's definitely like up for debate if Oliver like actually has a thing for Felix or not. But either way, he is the object of his desire in whatever way that might be. If it's just obsession, if it's just like whatever. And I don't want to say too much because I think this movie has entered pop culture like big time. I mean, like Jacob Elordi's like bathwater and all that. So I don't think I'm like spoiling anything really, but I'm still gonna be kind of vague. But he is the object of desire, and I think it explores it in a fun way. And also, just besides that, it's a good movie. I think it's a really fun time. I think it's shocking. I think where it's going, you might kind of start to put your get your knee, like your hands on it, but it honestly it gagged me. And there is some aspects of it that are like, holy shit, but I love Emerald Fennell for doing that. She is the writer-director. She also made Promising Young Woman, if you're familiar with that. Of course, I think great casting. We have Barry Keoghan, as I mentioned, Jacob Elordi, another Rosamund Pike movie, Carey Mulligan, and Felix Matthew, I believe is how you say his last name. So great casting. I think it looks great. That's why I gave it my cinematography award. I love the aspect ratio. I love the coloring. It just looks so good. There's also, this scene sounds so silly and stupid, but there is this Ethel Cain edit of this movie that I honestly, if you fuck with this edit, I'll play it right now. I'm not ashamed. If you fuck with this edit, you will fuck with the movie. That is the vibes of the film, and I you know what, some people might not put it in queer cinema, but I'm gonna include it in queer cinema because how many movies were there made that had this type of like subtext situation before they could be more forward about it? So if we can include those in the conversation, then we can include this in the conversation. So if this film interests you, it is available on Amazon. All right, last but not least, plot twist, we have a documentary with 2019's Trixie Mattel Moving Parts with the following premise. An intimate portrait of RuPaul's Drag Race alumnus Trixie Mattel, i.e. Milwaukee-raised Brian Furcus. It sheds light on Furcus's personal relationship with the art of drag and his various personal endeavors. So this is the documentary of the icon, the skinny legend, Trixie Mattel, and I wanted to include it in this video because I think Trixie is a modern queer icon. She's not even just like a drag race success story, she's not a drag icon. I think she's just transcended to where she's just a staple in like pop culture. I mean, people who don't even like watch Drag Race or interact with drag or like queer culture know who Trixie Mattel is. Like, I think you can just say Trixie and she has entered the zeitgeist so much that you can say Trixie and like people know who you're talking about. And she's just such an amazing success story that that's why I wanted to include this film, because I think it really just shows a queer person from kind of the middle of nowhere and how they've been able to succeed and flourish. And it's honestly like a really, for as colorful and as like fun as her branding and persona is, this movie is a little bit somber, like it. And I don't want to like focus too much on like trauma and stuff, but she is somebody who always talks about how she's like okay and she's like not traumatized and stuff, but there are some aspects from her past that are a little bit less than glamorous, even where she got her stage name from. So I think it's important to show how somebody like her, who is this huge queer figure, where she came from and like how it wasn't always pretty and stuff, but she is so next level successful now. I just think that's really important to highlight and like show queer people doing well. This was a 2019 Tribeca Film Festival pick, and I can see why. So even if you're somebody who doesn't care about drag or Drag Race or Trixie Mattel, I honestly would recommend this documentary. Is very revealing, and I think it's very important. So the only thing that sucks is it was originally distributed by Netflix, but it is no longer on there. It's kind of missing in action. But if it ever does resurface, or if you're okay paying the $2.99 to rent it, I definitely recommend this film. So there you have it. Those are 10 queer film recommendations that I am recommending for Pride 2025. These are just movies that I feel like you might have a good time with that so happen to be queer stories. And as I talked about, I think some of them are really important. So definitely give them a watch if they interested you. Come back to the comment section and tell me what you thought, or you can also leave in the comment section some of your favorite queer stories in film. But that is all I have for now, so I will see you in the next one.